Thank you for still being here to listen to a few words I have to say. I am a great advocate of free speech, and I would say that just as I grew up thinking that politicians should have that extra threshold, should go that extra mile, why should less be expected of me? And it is this mantra that I live my life with, because we have crossed the line way too often. In a time of woke millennials, in a time of anonymity, keyboard warriors, we have so often blurred the lines between what is acceptable speech and what is not. And I get this question so often from young girls that I speak to when I go to different schools across my country, but also in other countries, and they ask me, why should I ever enter politics? Why should I, as a young girl, when I see so much intimidation, so much bullying, so much harassment, why should I actually speak up? And my answer to that little girl who's asking me is always the same, because when I was at school, I was told, if you believe in yourself, you will not allow anybody to bully you. But all too often, we have too many young people in our continent who feel like they have to, because they're intimidated, shut up, be shy, and not speak up. And it is, I believe, our job, and I'm not only talking about Malta, but I'm talking about different countries in the world, when we see what is happening, how difficult it is also to be a woman in politics, how much you're expected to be even better than men in most things you say, how much you're expected to have an even thicker skin in accepting what is said about what you say and what you've worn and what you've looked like on that particular day. And when I look at different examples, when I look at, for example, the tragic and very, very horrific assassination of Joe Cox in the United Kingdom a few years ago, when I see what happened in my own country, that Daphne Caruana Galizia was assassinated, these last few hours we've had a few developments in that regard. When I see that 6 of my Polish colleagues in this parliament have been symbolically hung by the exponents of the Polish government today, then I worry. And how can we, as EPP, how can we as politicians combat that? I think the danger would be to be even more extremist. It is sometimes so easy, so much easier to look at vote catching instead of what is the reasonable, logical, pragmatic, but also the safest and most responsible decision to take. How much more difficult it is to keep the center, how much more difficult it is to counter the narrative of hatred. Because words are used today online to goad you, to make you go that step further, until you realize that the premise of you never going and crossing that line is one that you have crossed yourself. And we do have a problem in the European Union. When I see that there are so many Jewish families who have packed their bag ready to go at any minute. When I see that if you are a Muslim, you cannot use your name to apply for a job. When I see black people entering shops and being glanced at. This is where we need to react. And I think as the European People's Party, as we heard Kyriakos before say, as we have so many parties in government and in opposition, in parliaments, in every member state, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to counter the hate. We have a responsibility to rebut the narrative. And I'm confident that if we do this together, as the politicians from the center, we can get one day to be able to look all younger people, my children, in the eye and say, you can do it too. Ignore the hate and believe in what is true. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberta. Thank you for your views. It's really important. This is a topic that concerns us today and in the future for sure. It's a very important topic. Let's see now in the audience. Do we have any questions for our speaker? Until the audience thinks a little further, I would like to ask you something. How do you see, like, in terms of hate speech and disinformation and propaganda, how do you see media literacy How do you see the connection? How can we make it better?
Well, I think we all have a role to play there. I think, first of all, whether you are in politics or not, whether you are a teacher in a school, whether you are training young people or anybody who could be active in the public space, which is effectively everybody, I think we all have to learn what are the limits. Too many people think that the limit does not apply to them, just because they are speaking anonymously. But even if they are not, a few weeks ago we had a riot in one of the migrant centers in my country. And I was impressed by the Nazi symbolism, by the far-right extremism that was expressed by persons in their own name, online, and thinking that because they are behind a computer, they can be protected. They aren't. And I don't report every threat that I receive, but some of them, in order to protect that little girl, as I mentioned before, in order to make sure that whoever is still thinking about whether to enter politics or take a position in civil society or be open, publicly, defend what is right, then I actually try to stop them. I ask for the authorities in my country to take action, because if you cross the line, you need to face the consequences.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Roberta.
much. Thank you.